Hey everyone, Jeff Sarr from the Practical Drummer here. I'm excited to show you this new groove and fill that I've just worked out. I came up with an idea for a groove that at first I tried to play it and I couldn't really get it, but now I seem to have integrated it a little bit more today after a couple sessions. And basically the groove is, I'll show you the groove first and then I'll show you the fill and I'll put it together. Instead of just playing 16th notes on the hi-hat, which sounds great, I play those all the time, what I want to do is actually go between sound sources. So I'm going to do between the hi-hat and the ride, one E and okay, so that's the ostinato. It keeps going back and forth. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So on each quarter note you just shift, okay? But the snare drum, in this case, it's going to be on 2 and 4 still. So it'll be 1 E and a 2 E and a. See that? So you've got to go 2 E and a. And then back to 3, 3 E and a. See that? So add the bass drum. So you can see a couple times I missed the E. I went 2 E and a, okay? So again, I'm just training my brain to do this and then come up with more complicated bass drum patterns and left hand inflections. So to come off the one of the cymbals with an E or a D at certain times, right? So, but I'm not going to get there today. I'm not going to show that today. So that's the basic groove. Okay, so you can try different bass drum patterns, that's fine, but I just threw in the duh of one there to try it out on live TV, and you can say I messed it up the first couple times, but the last time I got it perfect. So you really got to break it down, and I did. I actually slowed this down, painfully slow, to try to figure out where the bass drum falls, so I don't miss the the ostinato, so I don't mess the ostinato up. But here's the fill. I'm going to show you this cool fill. So I'm a fan of 4/3 polyrhythm, which is 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1, right? So accenting every third 16th note. Okay, or right hand lead. Okay, so I've shown you those in previous videos, but this is going to be a different articulation of this 4/3, okay? So what I want to do is going to be very interesting is, starting on 1, I'm going to go 1 E and D, but then I'm going to play the third one on the left hand. So 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 3 E and a. Okay, so it's a 2-measure phrase. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and 1. So and 1, back to 1. Otherwise, if you let it go to the third measure, it would be the E of 1, right? 4 E and a, 1 E. But in this case, I'm using a 2-measure phrase because it resolves in 3 measures. But why I'm doing it, I could just go all right hands, right? But I want to challenge myself to do a left hand articulation of this, because I'll show you why. I'm going to add in a couple notes in between this and then break it up between drums on either side of the drum set. So I'm going to go 1 E and a, and then 2 E and a, 3 E and a. So you can see Okay, so you've got 2, And you've got one. Okay, so you've got one hit with the right hand, but then you've got two with the left hand, okay, on the snare drum. To the pulse, though, here it is. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E. See that? Up to speed, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I used a couple different cymbals there, but still, I used two rights and a left on the cymbals, which creates actually an interesting a three feel using this 4/3. So you're already in a polyrhythm, so you're adding kind of another polyrhythm on top of it, which is kind of interesting. It sounds weird, but why I'm doing it this way is because I have a drum over here, timbali, and I have a floor tom. Now, I don't want to get into like crossing, like, that gets really awkward, okay? So what I want to do is, on the right hand accents, I'm going to use the timbali, and when I go up to the cymbal on the left, I'm going to use the floor tom. Okay, so I'll do it slow, starting on 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a. Use the timbali. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4. To the hi-hat now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, up to speed. 2, 3, 4. Okay. So you could even take it one step further. So that sounds kind of cool. Let me just play that in a groove. And I'll show you the original groove in a minute, but so again, that's a 2-measure phrase, so you've got to start on the 7th measure if you're doing 4-measure phrases. So I went with the groove a little bit longer, realized that it's a two-measure phrase, so I had to stick it into a 2-measure phrase. So I started it on the, you can either start it on the 3rd measure into the 4th measure or the 7th measure into the 8th measure, right? This is a 2-measure phrase, and it sounds pretty cool because you're adding different drums on each side of the kit and adding cymbals on different sides of the kit, but not getting all confused with your hands, like trying to cross. It gets really awkward. So I like to play in an open style if I can, to play the left with the left and the right with the right. So I'm going to put this all together though now with this groove. So, okay, so let's do that right now. I was just kind of warming up with that again. So I'm going to play 6 measures of this groove, and then the last 2 measures I'm going to play this. Back into the, right? Okay, so I'm going to attempt this on live TV in front of everybody. So here we go. I just came up with this just yesterday or the day before. It's been in my brain. I practiced it once or twice, and I just practiced this fill actually before I turned the. I've never done this before, and I'm coming up with this. Again, when you practice and you know what you're doing, ideas start to flow. I'm going to try to put all this together. If I mess up, I'll start it over again. Okay, here we go. 1, 2. Okay, so as you can see, I did it right, but then I forgot to come back into the groove, which is a no-no if you're playing with a band, by the way. But then I gave I think a couple measures space, did a fill, and came back into the groove. Okay, so you get it. Try that out. Again, get creative with your fills. You can articulate this differently. Instead of going, you can do this. You can add a 30-second note in between one of those 16th notes, right? So instead of, so you've got to work that out, right? You've got to work it out with your brain. I'm not going to show you that now, but it just sounds interesting. It takes it up a little bit of a different level. It makes it sound more fat when you add these other little inflections, okay? So try that out. Share this video. Post a comment. I'd love to hear if this is relevant for you. It can be really fun if you're just jamming away and a little bit like an up-tempo. Right, so it doesn't have to be in a rock setting. You can play it really in any style of music you want, really. So that was just kind of an up-tempo thing. And so the sky's the limit. Just try it out. Once you get it in your body and you understand, you can start to use different drums, different cymbals, and create different actually patterns. As you can see, I did 2 cymbals on the right and 1 on the left. So it just creates this kind of interesting, especially with the 2 different drums, this really wild, syncopated, polyrhythmic on top of a polyrhythmic feel. So good luck. Let me know. Bye.